you were talking about, you were going to tell us a story about this dude.
I was gonna say, well, I wrote a story about a guy, right? Because I was in prison. I wrote a bunch of true crime stories. Guys, I got some guys, I optioned some guys film rights and wrote a bunch of stories. I wrote a book. I wrote 7 books. But anyway, so I had this one guy. I wrote his story, and he got caught. It was a bank robbery. It was it's called Cash Logistics. He set up basically a huge robbery. There were like 2 or 3 career criminals that he sets up to rob him. So they rob him, they steal the money. He ends up getting caught for another robbery he does himself. Well, the FBI knows that he set up the other robbery. They just can't prove it. So when they catch him on this second robbery, he says nothing. They're like, look, you're going to get 15 years. It was like 12 or 15 years. I forget what it was. I think it was 15. So they're like, you're going to get 15 years. And he's like, oh, I get 15 years then. And they're like, bro, if you cooperate in the first robbery and tell us who, and they have the guys, they know who they are. They haven't caught them, but they know who they are. They're like, if you just cooperate and tell us who these guys are, you don't even have to do the 15. You'll end up with probably 10 years. He says, nah, man, I'm not going to do that. So he gets 15 years. He goes to prison. He's in prison for about a year or 2. The other guys end up getting arrested for something else. They cooperate against him for being involved in the first robbery. He gets another 8 or 9 years. He ends up with like 22 or 23 years because he didn't. The other guys had been to prison. And so they were like, yeah, we're going to cooperate because we know we're going to get 30 years. So they cooperate. So the one guy that stays strong ends up doing 22 years. These guys get like 7 or 8 years apiece. They're already out. He's still doing his time because he thought, I'm going to be a tough gangster and I'm going to keep my mouth shut. Did you think that the scumbags that are robbing and stealing out there weren't going to tell on you? Like 99% of them are. There's always one guy that says, fuck it, I'm going to do my 25 years. Like, that's insane, bro. Like, and then your buddies end up getting busted and they end up in prison anyway.
I mean, I don't agree with the time that they give out to people. Like me, I was 24. I got a 40-year sentence. I don't agree with that stuff. You know what I mean? But, sometimes, and I tell people this, going to prison is part of being a drug dealer. Going to prison is part of being a robber. Going to prison is part of doing mortgage fraud. You know what I mean? So it kind of goes hand in hand. It's not the good part. It's the bad part. So, I mean, it is what it is, right? Let's talk about prison, though. You end up going to a low. Any problems over there?
I mean, not for me. I once again, I taught the real estate class when I was over there. Taught the real estate class. Everybody loved me. Everything was good. Listen, people knew I was cooperating over there.
Let me ask you this, right? Are they stealing people's shit over there? They're like the Chomos? Are they taking their commissary when they're at Unicor? I mean, they don't steal nothing from you. You never have nothing like that happen to you.
No. First of all, I'm a clean-cut white guy. Everybody wants me to be their roommate. Everybody's asking me questions. I can help read your legal work. I help people out. I'm a nice guy. It's not like I'm all tatted up and I got no teeth. I'm educated.
Jesus.
So
you're an asset. You're an asset to people at the prison.
Absolutely.
So they kind of like,
that's true. You can get away with a lot if you're an asset.
So you're just kind of like, man, leave Matt alone, man. He's all right, man. He's just doing his time type of thing.
Yeah.
So you're sitting in prison with this 26-year sentence. Are you thinking in your mind like, I'm screwed? Do they come talk to you like, yo, we're about to help you? I mean, how does that go down?
No. At some point I meet a guy named Frank Amadeo. He's a rapid cycling bipolar. He was a lawyer. He was disbarred. He got 22 years for stealing $180 million from the federal government. Just batshit crazy and brilliant, by the way. So they didn't cut my sentence. Like nobody was ever arrested in my case as a result of my cooperation. So at some point I get approached by American Greed comes to me and says, we want to interview you. I talked to my lawyer goes, U.S. attorney says, I want him to be interviewed. We'll consider it substantial assistance. So I do that. I get interviewed at the prison. They run the American Greed. My lawyer goes back to the U.S. attorney and says, "Hey, he did it. They aired it. We want his sentence reduced." And she says, "Yeah, it's just not enough." So then I get a guy that comes to me and says, "I want to write an ethics and fraud course with you to help teach mortgage brokers, because every mortgage broker has to take so many ethics and fraud hours every year. We're continuing education course is what it's called." So I teach the ethics and fraud course that mortgage brokers around the nation use. I wrote the course, 9,500 words. And after the U.S. attorney, this guy flew up to Atlanta, met with the U.S. attorney and my attorney. She says, "I will consider this substantial assistance." We do it. He starts using it. He writes a letter. We put in a motion. She says, "It's just not enough." My lawyer says, "You're fucked." She's like, "You're screwed because you don't meet," like, substantial assistance is when you cooperate and it results in a conviction or an arrest or conviction of another individual. Just doing these programs doesn't meet that requirement per the statutes. So my lawyer, so I go to this guy, Frank Amadeo, who's doing legal work for guys in the prison. He's in prison. And I explain the situation. And he says, "Yeah, I'm not going to let this happen." He said, "Your lawyer, we're going to file a 2255 because your lawyer she's not ineffective as much as she didn't understand the law and she was misled." So he writes.
So really, she's ineffective because she doesn't know the law.
Well, yeah, I agree. But his argument was kind of like, that's a tough one to win. So, I mean, there's 3,500 that are filed for every one that sees some action. You know what I'm saying? Like, 2255s are tough. You got to be good.
I win a lot.
Have a claim.
I win a lot, especially on those issues. Lafler versus Cooper, Missouri versus Fry, Strickland versus Washington, failure to give you correct legal advice about your sentencing exposure, all of that stuff. You had an agreement. They violated the plea agreement. It was a verbal agreement. I've never read your case, but I'm sure that's probably what the avenue was.
Well, that's the exact argument. But you have to admit, you probably don't take on frivolous, like, if you don't think you can win. How many 2255s are filed that get nowhere?
Oh, it's a lot because they're frivolous. Like, I pick and choose. You're right about that. I do pick and choose.
Okay, so you're picking winners. You wouldn't take a case that you're like, "Yeah, this is a done deal. I'll never win this," but you'll take the money. Amadeo's not taking money. He's doing it just because he's in prison. He's a lawyer. He can do it. So he files a 2255. He says she was first of all, she was misled by the prosecution. They told her it would be considered. It wasn't. We were in a bad spot. So we go back and forth. And eventually the government, of course, they say I'm time barred. It's been 7 years. He argues equitable tolling, which doesn't apply, but he argues it. He says every time they ask me to do something, it reset the bar. So, and he's got some case law. It's questionable. But regardless, we go back and forth with the judge, and eventually the U.S. attorney, they file a 1-level reduction, which allows me to go back in front of the judge. So then I get to argue, and we argue in front of the judge with my new attorney. You can imagine when they sent my new attorney in, and she flies from Atlanta and meets with me, and I explain to her that a guy who's mentally ineffective or incompetent is doing my paperwork. He's filing my motions for me. So she was like, "Yeah, that's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard."
Who was the lawyer? It wasn't Marcia Shine, was it?
No. The first one, I had 2. This just happened twice.
I'm talking about the post-conviction attorney from Atlanta.
I got all public defenders.
Okay.
So this was her name was Esther Panich. So she comes in, she's like, "Yeah, that's bizarre. Like, I've never heard, that's insane. You're letting a guy who's certifiably crazy file your paperwork." I'm like, "Yeah, well, nobody else would do it." And so I get in front of the judge. The judge says, "Listen, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reduce your sentence by 3 levels. So I get 7 years off my sentence. Still, that's 19 and a half years. So I go back to Coleman. I'm walking around. There's a guy there by the name of Ron Wilson. Ron Wilson had a $57 million Ponzi scheme where he had stolen, like, retirees and churches, pension fund money, and just blown it. 57 million over the course of 15 years. So he and I are, as friendly as you can be, right?
He stole my grandmother's money. I know who he is. No, I'm joking. I'm joking, bro.
So
don't say he's your good friend.
Yeah, so we're walking around. Well, this is how good of a friend he was. We're walking around the compound, and he's cooperating against a few people with in South Carolina. And so we're walking around, and he says, he keeps saying, they're never going to give me anything off. He got 19 and a half years. He goes, they're never going to give me anything off my sentence. And I go, for my cooperation. I was like, why do you say that? He says, well, because they think I've hidden money. And I went, yeah, but he dug up like $6 million. I said, you gave him like $6 million. He said, yeah, but they think there's more out there. And I went, okay, well, you gave them all the money. They'd have to find the money. They'd have to prove that to not give you cooperation. No, they're going to fuck me. They're going to screw me. They're not going to give me anything. And I'm like, well, what? So he keeps saying this. This goes on for months. So one day we're walking, and I said, bro, why do you keep saying that? Like, they're not going to find any money. You're going to get it something. And if not, it doesn't matter. We'll have Frank file something. And he looks at me and he goes, can I trust you? And I go, probably not. And he starts laughing. He goes, I did put away some money. And I was like, okay. And like, I'm not even inquiring. He just volunteers. And he says, yeah, he said, my wife, which is now divorcing me because she found out he had a mistress. I gave her a little bit of money. She's got, maybe $150,000 in cash. Maybe maybe somewhere around that. He said, and my brother's holding some money for me, maybe 30 grand. I went, okay. And he said, I'm afraid that they're gonna get a hold of that money, or they're gonna turn it in, or they're gonna find out. And I went, well, your wife's not gonna say anything because she's already been interviewed and she denied she had the money, and your brother has already been interviewed, and that's not gonna happen. So I wouldn't worry about it. And he goes, I still think they're gonna figure it out, and something's gonna happen. They're never gonna give me anything. I said, all right, well, don't worry about it. We keep walking. Because the government never wanted to give me anything to begin with, I just laid in bed. I didn't even think about it. Like, I'm laying in bed going, is that enough to help me? Is that enough to give me something? And I thought, no, that's not enough. Like, they're not going to give me anything for that. This guy's already in jail. He's going to die in prison already. He's already like 66, 67 years old. He'll never make it out. So they're not going to give me anything. So I lay there. I lay there for like a month or two. What happened was I was rewriting my book, and I wanted to put the part about me being resentenced in the back of my book. So one day I called my lawyer, and I said, hey, I need you to get me my sentencing guideline, or I need you to get my transcripts for my resentencing. And she says, okay. She said, all right, cool. She said, I'll get them, I'll order them, and I'll send you, how much it's going to be. And I said, okay, I'll get somebody to pay you. No problem. She was okay. Listen, this woman never wanted to talk to me before, ever. And all of a sudden she says, anything going on? I went, well, what do you mean? Like, I'm ready to hang up the phone. She goes, everything okay? I went, everything's fine. She goes, anything happening in there you want to talk about or anything? And I went, it was the weirdest thing. And I went, you know what? Something happened like a month ago, a few weeks ago. I said, look, there's a guy named Ron Wilson. And I explained what happened. Here's what he told me. And she goes, let me look him up. Goes on. She goes, oh, wow, this is a bad guy. She goes, yeah. She said, let me look into this. She never wanted, listen, she was, I don't want to say useless during my sentencing, but she wasn't great. So
she's a federal attorney calling another guy a bad guy.
Yeah.
And she represents all bad guys, right?
Exactly.
According to her.
Yeah, and I'm a bad guy. Like, I got more time than this guy. So, listen, a week later, a CO comes up to me and goes, hey, Cox. And I go, yeah, what's up? He goes, you got to go to SIS. And I went, okay. I didn't even think she would call anybody. So what I was actually thinking was that these SIS used to get a hold of my paperwork because I was writing people's stories. So I would order Freedom of Information Act on other inmates, and they would get it and then call me in and say, why are you getting this? And I'd say, oh, I'm writing a story on that guy, blah, blah, blah. And they'd go, okay, here it is. They could always call the guy, but they've called so many of those guys up there that they're like, yeah, he's writing my story. So I go in there thinking that's what it is. And I walk in and the lieutenant says, sit down. I sit down and he picks up the phone, dials the phone, gives me the phone. And I'm like, and I go, hello. And the guy goes, hey, this is Agent so-and-so with the Secret Service. I understand that you know where Ron Wilson has hidden money. And I went, whoa. I want something in writing. So I end up getting a letter, an email in writing from the U.S. attorney to him saying if anything Cox tells us results in cash or a conviction, we'll consider it substantial assistance. So I then talked to the agent after that. I explained to the agent what he said. They then request an interview with Wilson's wife and brother. The wife walks in with $350,000 in cash and gold bullion. The brother comes in with 150, gets $500,000. He had told me like 150. They walk in, they got $500,000 and precious metals, everything. Wilson gets put on the pack out. He gets put on the pack out. He goes back to South Carolina. He finds out, of course, that I cooperated. He gets 6 months added to his sentence. His wife and brother get probation, 1 year probation. They have to do like 50 or 100 community service hours. No felonies. I don't think they were felonies anyway. They were like 1 year probation. I don't know if that ends up being a felony. It was obstruction of justice. I think they got charged with. So that was it. He goes somewhere else. I don't hear anything. My lawyer calls. They won't return calls. Eventually, I go back to Frank Amadeo. We file a 2255. The government comes back and says, we don't know what Mr. Cox is even talking about. We don't know of any investigation he's cooperating in. We then send the email saying that they did know. We send it to the judge. The judge orders an evidentiary hearing. And the government ends up, oh, no. That one, the judge actually said, I believe you're time barred, and I'm going to send it to the appellate court. He goes, but you don't have to get a certificate of eligibility. You don't have to pay the fees. Like he came up with all these things I didn't, so it would go straight in. The government then immediately comes back and says, we're going to give you a lawyer. And then they give me a lawyer. Lawyer flies down. We start arguing with the government. They want to give me 1 level reduction. We end up getting a 3-level reduction. That's 5 more years off my sentence. By the time that happens, I'm like a year away from walking out of prison. So, I mean, when that happens, I've got 1 year left. 1 year later, I go to the halfway house.
So
that's it.
All right. So you cooperate in prison. That happens a lot, doesn't it?
I don't think so.
You don't think that jailhouse? You don't think that there's jailhouse snitches in murder cases all the time?
Oh yeah. Well, maybe, but in a something like this?
No, very seldom will you see something like that happen. But, the point is this, that I want people to know that these things happen in prison. This channel's real and it's raw. So this guy trusts you. You tell him not to trust you. He tells you his business anyway. You do what you have to do to benefit yourself, and it works out for you. Doesn't really work out for him. He loses all that money. He gets another 6 months. The wife's on probation, probably an elderly lady. The brother, he ends up jammed up. Does Matthew Cox feel bad, though, after, like, damn, I'm going to get out?
Not at all. I got 5 years off my sentence, and he got out on COVID. He's home right now. He got 6 months added to his time. He's fine.
So he gets out on compassionate release, and you're like, well, hey, man, it all worked out. We played the government. We beat the government.
Let me tell you what happened. One day I'm standing up for count. You know how they bring the new guys in, they're wearing the fucking jumpsuits and everything. They bring them in, the khakis and everything.
Yeah.
This guy's right across from my cell. And we're standing there waiting for count. This black guy. And he looks over at me and he goes, hey, man. And I said, yeah, what's up? You're supposed to be quiet for count, at the low. So you're standing there. and we're waiting for the guards to come around, but there's some time. They aren't there yet. And he goes, hey, man. And I said, yeah, what's up? He goes, you know a guy named Matt Cox? He had just gotten there. He'd been there like an hour.
Yeah.
And I went, yeah. And I said, well, I said, I need to talk to him. And I go, about what? He said, I got a message from this guy in he said, I met in South Carolina. And so I pull out my ID and I held it up and I go, I'm Matt Cox. Keep in mind, there's not that many white guys, you know? So he looks at me and he goes, oh, okay. He said, you know Ron Wilson? And I'm like, and I went, yeah, I know Ron Wilson. And he goes, yeah, I know you do. I said, okay. I said, what's up? And, you know, I'm thinking there may be an issue. But I said, why? I said, what's up? And he goes, he wanted me to let you know that he has no hard feelings toward you, that he'd have done the same thing, and to let you know, no hard feelings, and he hopes you get the most amount of time you can get off your sentence. Now, I'd already been resentenced. He just didn't know that.
Maybe Ron was hoping you told him where you buried all your money.
Maybe. So I looked at the guy and I go, is this going to be a problem? And he looked at me and he looks around and he goes, nah, bro. He said, trust me. He goes, I ain't going to be here very long. You know what I'm saying? I said, no. I said, I know exactly what you're saying. He said, all right. He said, yeah. He said, oh, by the way, he said, Ron also wanted me to let you know, to tell you that he's okay. He found Jesus. And I said, okay, well, good. And he goes, all right. Bro, that guy dude was gone like a month or two.
Unbelievable.
So I would love to talk to Ron Wilson.
So, Matt, let me ask you this, before we get ready to close. How long have you been free?
3 years.
3 years. What are you doing in your life now? Are you all done with the scamming and the conning and...
Yeah, I mean, I'm running my YouTube channel. Run a YouTube channel. I do true crime. I do interviews. It's funny. I'm wearing this shirt. I usually wear a white T-shirt. You'll always see me in like a white T-shirt, pretty much. Like I just ended up doing an interview from I have 2 channels for one of my channels. Just was interviewed, came down here and did your thing. Otherwise, I would have put another shirt on real quick. I'm running a couple channels and I do interviews. I'm working on getting a documentary made. I've written 7 books. I've optioned a bunch of guys life rights to their stories.
So you're doing big things. You changed your life. You're not stealing money no more. You're just trying to live your best life.
It sounds good. It's just, bro, it's a struggle, but I get to turn the TV whenever I want to. My girlfriend lets me have sex with her a few times a week. It's good times. I'm okay with that.
You just got a different demeanor. You know what I mean? You're kind of one of them nonchalant type of dudes. Usually I ask people, what message do you have to give to younger dudes, right? And people might be thinking, right, because they're probably going to, I don't know what they're going to say in the comments, but.
Oh, it'll be great, bro. It'll be a cesspool.
So, usually I say, hey, what message do you got? And, people might be like, oh, man, screw this dude. But you probably do have a message.
Bro, my message is, what the problem with my message is? It's the same thing your mother and father told you. You know what I'm saying? Like, money doesn't matter. Like, I'm happier now than I was when I had $2 or $3 million in the bank. I'm super happy and thankful and appreciative. I'm humble. I try and be humble. And I'm an arrogant, narcissistic prick. Like, you've never met anybody that just is such a selfish bastard as I am. And I am constantly having to remind myself to just kind of be humble and appreciative because I should be in prison right now. And so, I just think I take the little things and, I'm appreciative and I'm glad I'm out of prison. And honestly, like, listen, you get in my car, I'm saying, bro, you better not have a gun on you. Like, I don't get in your car unless we have a talk. Like, I'm not going to front. And I tell everybody, like, bro, don't tell me nothing. Because the cops come here and say, so-and-so, absolutely. What do you want to know? Like, my freedom isn't worth it isn't worth, I'm not jeopardizing anything for you.
So here's my message, right? Your message is all right, but here's my message. My message for people is that these things happen. People go to prison and the government starts talking about, hey, we're about to give your ass 40 years. We're about to give you 50 years. We're going to give you life. And then you get these rich white folks, right, that have been stealing people's money, and they say, look, man, we're going to keep it real with you, right? About to give you 30 years. We're about to give you 25 years. If you don't tell on all these other rich white people you've been stealing money with. And 99% of the time, the people are going to say, you know what? They don't care about Jimmy. They don't care about his wife. They don't care about his kids. They're going to do what they got to do. And the next thing you know, Martha Stewart's down the road. She's doing a little Fed time. So, even people that are watching right now, man, if you're out there frauding, manipulating people, 99, a lot of, I'm not going to say all the time, but a lot of times they catch you. They're banging people right now with all that COVID relief money. I own a prison consultant business. All kinds of people are calling me. There's a guy that, he got a loan. He said he owned a barber shop and he stole like 25 grand. He got a loan for 20. He never owned a barber shop.
Right.
Feds, send him an intent letter. He's like, oh shit. I mean, it ain't a whole lot of money, but what else has he done? So these things do happen. People get in prison and, young kids, Matt, 17, 18, 19 years old, they kill somebody. I mean, we just had a guy just killed a cop in my city 3 days ago. There's been a murder every single day in my city since then. And, they get in there, they're 17 years old, they're 18 years old, and they're feeling down, they're out. They're like, damn, man. And they start to confide in people in prison, right? And when they're confiding in prison, the other guy's like, yep, I got this robbery. Keep telling me, where'd you put the murder? Oh, the murder weapon's hidden over there. And they're lining your ass up. And the next thing you know, man, they're on the stand and your ass got 25 to life. So I want people to think about that, man. Before we go, any last words?
No, I appreciate you having me on. Good times. Listen, I think the comment section, it's going to be bad, bro. It's going to be bad.
Well, it might be bad, but you know what? This is the thing. These are the things that happen. This is,
reality.
we can't, like I said, I don't have a prison tough guy YouTube channel. I'm no longer into prison politics. I'm into being a father, into being a husband, and I explained that to you when you had reached out to me and we talked. Like, look, dude, I'm not on no tough guy shit. I'm on some real and raw. This is what it is. And there's all different aspects. A lot of guys have prison channels and they just talk about, this is what prison's like. And I talk about, this is what prison is really like. These are the things that really happen. People do get killed. People do get stabbed. People do cooperate. People do take your drugs and check in and tell on you. These are the things that happen in prison. So, I mean, the comments are going to be in the comments, right?
Listen, if you're innocent, you got a 95% chance of being found guilty if you go to trial. Like, they're going to get 4 or 5 people to get on the stand and say you were a part of it. Like, I mean, it's horrible. This justice system is it's horrible. The prosecutors are horrible. They're vicious.
Well, this is the world that we live in. I'm going to close the show and tell people to go check out your YouTube channel. Tell them what the YouTube channel is.
Yeah, it's Matthew Cox Inside True Crime, and I got another channel that really has nothing to do with me. It's called Inside the Darkness, where when I get somebody to come to the channel, then I have them basically sit on a stool and just tell their story by themselves without being interviewed. That's like a separate channel. I just started it. It's doing, it's got like 1,500 subscribers, but I'm excited about it. It's just criminals just telling their story.
And your other channel has how many subscribers? Like 55,000, 60,000? What do you got?
No, you have like 55 or something. I got like 51, 52. I think I have 51,000.
Yeah, I mean,
you're doing better than me, bro. You're blowing up. That's why I got to get in there now before you're too big where you don't talk to me. You wouldn't return my call.
Oh, dude, the one thing I do is I return calls. I talk to people. I do a lot of things. But anyway, I'm going to close the show. Tell people, man, I appreciate them tuning in. I want them to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, share the video. Make sure you leave a comment. We're going to respond. Matt's going to respond too because he wants you to subscribe to his channel. With respect, Blood on the Razor Wire TV. Until tomorrow, we're out.